Welcome to the FarmBits podcast, a product of Nebraska Extension Digital Agriculture. I'm Jackson Stansel.
And I'm Samantha Teaton, and we come to you each week to discuss the trends, the realities, and the value of digital agriculture.
Through interviews and panels with experts, producers, and innovators from all sectors of digital technology, we hope that you step away from each episode with new practical knowledge of digital agriculture technology. Hello, FarmBits followers, and welcome back to the FarmBits podcast.
In this episode, we will be taking a look at imagery for use for precision crop protection.
Tim Pearson, Regional Sales Manager for Taranis, joins us on this episode to discuss the Taranis platform and the ways in which it is being leveraged to help trusted advisors bring better, smarter decisions about crop protection to their growers.
Taranis is a company that originated in Israel and is now based out of Indiana.
Their multi-layer, high-resolution approach to image-based scouting combined with capable AI algorithms is significantly enhancing crop scouting operations.
It was great to learn a bit from Tim, so let's get to our interview.
I've heard a lot about Taranis, but I'm kind of interested in the name. Do you know if there's any meaning behind Taranis or kind of, where the name came from? Does it relate to a mission of some sort?
So Taranis is the Celtic god of thunder. So rain,
interesting.
Weather.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you mind giving us an overview kind of what Taranis's product offerings are and kind of what the company's all about?
Sure. So we're a digital agronomy company, and our product is precision scouting.
Okay.
We use a couple different modes to get there, whether it's drones or satellite imagery. We provide service from our with our equipment and our labor. We'll have crop consultants, retailers sign up for our service,
okay.
And then it's usually some kind of a package, whether it's 3 flights, 5 flights, and when I say flights, I mean Smart Scout missions, which is what we do with the drone.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it all sounds very technical, and there's a lot of really high tech processes we go through, but we're crop scouting is right. to simplify it.
Sure. And so when you say that you specified the drone flights part of things, so there's kind of like a 3-layer approach to what y'all do from my understanding. And so how do all those 3 layers, kind of that triage approach, how does that work? And how do you finally get to that drone stage of your scouting missions?
So and then I want to make sure I understand how your perception is when you say triage.
Sure.
We try to not do anything reactive. We try to be very proactive with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's through the satellite layers or whether it's with the Smart Scout missions with the drone, we want to be out there early to do the stand counts so that if there is an issue, we've got an opportunity to we create the map via all of the stand counts that we did in the field, and can actually write a prescription to know exactly how many acres needs replanted, and then put the prescription in the dashboard, export a shape file, stick it in a monitor, and go back and replant those very specific places.
Right. And so I guess what I was wondering is how does kind of the satellite interact with what you do on the drone? Is it satellite kind of informing where you go with the drone, which fields get attention first? How are y'all kind of using that layer?
So the satellite supplements the Smart Scout.
Okay.
Satellite layers are they're very useful,
mm-hmm.
but with the and not that may not be the case eventually.
Sure.
But right now, what we do with the drone is very much like a grid soil sample, where we have everything's on a grid pattern so that we can apply analytics and statistics to the results, and then predict other areas of the field that aren't being sampled.
Sure.
And if we don't do that in the grid pattern, the math doesn't work out. So
sure.
Right now, the way we do it's the way it needs to be done. And the evolution of how we do things and what we do from when I started 3 years ago till now has been not 3 years of evolution, but more like 10 years of evolution, how far it's come in a very short time period in our processes and everything that we do.
Yeah, can you maybe talk a little bit more about the difference between the satellite imagery and the drone imagery, and maybe like the pests that you could scout using each type of imagery and how that all works?
So the satellite imagery is an NDVI, just like we have seen and many other platforms.
Mhm.
We use a company that provides a little higher resolution than typical's 10 meter. We're using 3.7 meter resolution. So it does pick up on things that the lesser resolution satellites don't. And we apply some analytics to that image as well using the standard NDVI. We take a series of days, and it's math,
Yeah.
Mhm.
add and subtract, and then we'll show basically, which, not to make it too complicated, or make it sound too complicated,
Sure.
but basically it's these pixels have trended downwards or
Right.
these pixels have
Trended up.
way
Mhm.
upwards, and then the rest of the field's all doing what it should be doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's not by the pixel, but we do give an area of the field that have trended down
Sure.
and where that's at, or upwards.
And so with that satellite imagery, you're really kind of getting this high level overview of the field.
Yep.
But kind of the bread and butter that you've talked about is this, advanced scout kind of grid sample resolution.
Yep.
So is that kind of taking RGB images at these different locations? How exactly does that mission work?
So the Smart Scout missions, the resolution at stand count time, we fly a little bit higher, do a little bit bigger sample, and then the
Okay.
resolution's about 1 millimeter.
Okay. Wow.
Everything else, we come drop it down in altitude, and it's
Sure.
between 0.3 and 0.5 millimeters.
Wow.
So, and we're doing the 0.3 to 0.5. We'll actually identify weed species, nutrient deficiencies, diseases, insects if we see them, because we're taking a picture from up here straight down. So
Sure.
insects' habits during the day are not typical of one to be out sunbathing. They're
Mhm.
usually hiding under leaves or in the soil. So
Sure.
we do a couple different things, which it helps with satellite. If there's a flea beetle infestation or aphids or whatever, will show up on the satellite images.
Mhm.
Or in soybeans, will actually the AI that processes all this stuff has been taught to we call it tag
Right. Yep.
every shot hole in every one of the soybean leaves,
Wow.
and then it'll put the math to it and give you this percent defoliation,
Uh-huh.
and then create a heat
Mhm.
map from that, so we can see what parts of the field have more dense defoliation.
Yeah, that resolution is that is really high resolution, that 0.3 millimeters. Are you going straight from your imagery to a grower recommendation, or is there some other step in the process between that? Do your retailer partners take care of that?
So at the current time, we are not making any recommendations. That's something that in the future we may make recommendations of, when we see a pest, maybe this active ingredient, and never any specific brand, but
Mhm.
maybe this group of AI is active ingredients is good on this bug or this weed or whatever.
Sure.
And so when you currently think about like the actionable information that's delivered from the Taranis platform, does that kind of look like a shapefile that comes out of the program that identifies hotspots for certain types of pests? I mean, what exactly does that look like for somebody to act on?
So right now, we can look at the field a couple different ways.
Sure.
We can filter for whether it's weeds or insects or nutrient deficiencies or diseases. There's part of the initial, the landing page on the dashboard lets us pick how we want to filter our fields,
Sure.
because that's a lot of stuff to look through, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't have all day to look through all that. I need to know right now which fields need the most attention.
Absolutely.
So I pick weeds, and it starts with the worst and then goes progressively better.
Okay.
Same way with all the other, we call them insights,
Sure.
or the field health trend that we do with the satellite.
Right.
It can be filtered by any of the 5 of those. And then from that, you can dive into the field as deep as you want and look inside the individual samples.
Mhm.
If you need to, it's crazy. I've scouted thousands of acres from my desk at home,
Yeah.
just by using the filtering function and finding out, Nebraska, which fields have palmer in them, which fields have water hemp in them.
Yeah.
And then I want to go ground truth that, except I'm ground truthing it from my desk.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And then from those, we make we'll generate a heat map for grass weeds or broadleaf weeds. In the very near future, we'll be able to pick a weed if it's that palmer or water hemp.
Right.
I want to make a heat map out of. We'll be able to do that sooner than later.
Sure.
But right now, what's going to be left if the weeds don't die? What's left? Palmer and water hemp. So
right. Exactly. And Zach, you may, I don't know if you're going to ask a question about this, but how important do you think it really is to be able to identify which particular weed species it is and kind of get on it at a certain timeliness to make sure that it doesn't get away from you? Because I'm sure different weeds have different times at which, if you let them get past a certain stage, they're pretty much uncontrollable at that point.
Yeah, definitely. It is key to control some of these weeds when they're small. So that's where I see a real potential benefit to that high resolution is finding those weeds, those tough weeds that you mentioned, like Palmer amaranth, finding those when they're really small in that seedling stage. That also gives applicators time to get out to the field and do that action. And I think that's really cool about what Taranis has, that high resolution and actionable information for sure.
Yeah, I've saw scouting reports that we've got back after scouting fields that have seedling weeds in them you could have covered up with a quarter.
Wow.
That actually identified.
That's pretty incredible. It's what kind of made me think about that shapefile layer and kind of what, whether you're putting out some of these hotspots, is we had Rantizo on the podcast here. Their episode was released this past week, and Sam was kind of talking about how more or less they can get a map from Taranis or somebody like that and essentially plug it into those drones, and they'll fly off to those hotspots and go ahead and take care of things.
Or if I'm a retailer and have a direct inject machine, I can take the heat map and make a prescription to put extra mesotrione in, or
Sure.
If it's the soybeans have been sprayed post once already and I need to go just absolutely destroy where the palmer is, I can make a prescription, just go nail that one place with a burner instead of having to spray a big area of the field.
Right.
So yeah, it's really amazing being able to weeds is my thing, has been for 30 years. Not that the insects and diseases aren't, but we've got fungicides, and I've never been an agronomist in a strictly corn on corn area, so bugs were more of a soybean thing.
Sure. And so I guess we've talked a lot about what you can kind of see in these individual images. And you mentioned earlier that this is kind of like soil sampling, right? Where you go out and you take 2.5 acre grids. And so how exactly is Taranis able to, if they're only taking spot samples where you may or may not run into that particular pest that you're looking for, across that 2.5 acres, how exactly is it able to identify when that pressure may be enough for you to go out and take action on in your field, or, at least map out the entire field?
So we the initial scouting trip is triggered by growing degree units from planting date.
Okay.
So we all know how many GDUs it takes for corn to come out of the ground.
Right.
One thing that we didn't incorporate this year that we will in the future is the soil temperature. Because how many GDUs did we accumulate early when the soil never got above 50 during the day?
Yep.
So, and in that case, we have some human things that we can do to push or pull areas and make sure the timing's right. After that, it's typically it's every 3 weeks.
Okay.
Now, a lot of times the second one needs to be before 3 weeks so that we can go in and we can capture that weed species to know what we're spraying. So,
right.
And that's all things that are in the works for the future is squeezing that window on the second one. And then the third would be 3 weeks after that. And then if it's the 5-flight package, then you get into VT and or the R stages and soybeans.
Sure.
And even into grain fill or pod fill.
Sure. And at that point, I assume you start really being able to kind of determine fungicide applications and some of those other applications beyond just doing weeds out in the field, weed management in the field.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We all know if we're getting into the R stages or VT, weeds are, the one thing though that we do, we're still, it's not looking for something specific. So if it sees weeds, it's gonna capture that and bring it to notice. So, we're not only in the now, but now when I'm sitting down with a grower in the fall, I've got all this data that's not scribbled on, coffee spilled on notes that we tried to take,
Right.
or just from recollection of the growing season. Now I've got a lot of real hard data to look at and plan for next year.
Sure.
And you mentioned earlier, the planter. When we tag for stand counts, you can see the seed distribution in a row from the tag boxes, and you can see whether the planter is doing a good job or not, or it's skipping, or I had a planter that had one row that was doing 3 and then skipping 2 and then doing 3 and skipping 2, did it through the whole field.
Huh.
So that's all things that residue management.
Sure.
Doesn't have a stand everywhere. There's not a stand. There's more residue.
Yep.
So it's very much the same thing that a human can do, except it's the multitude of the information is
Sure.
so much more than a person could do. That the more information you have to make decisions, the better you are.
Right. And so when you think about kind of the way that you set up your business model, are the people that are typically purchasing Taranis' services, are those typically agronomic services providers? Are they co-ops? Can farmers go out and buy this for their own acres? I mean, how exactly do y'all set that up and provide it to folks?
It could be, farmers could, but typically our business model is more of a retail, whether it's independents or
Sure.
co-ops or whatever, and crop consultants,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would utilize us to
Sure.
make their business better and give their growers better and more information.
Yeah, I guess from your ag retail experience and that kind of perspective, like what do you look for in ag technology as far as, and how do you feel Taranis kind of fits the ag retail, like their needs really well from that perspective?
Like I said, I've always been a big fan of data, but now the agronomist, if we do have to go look at fields, I know which way to point the pickup when I leave the driveway. The fuel savings. I've got a potential customer that's doing a cost analysis now, right as we speak, on how much fuel they're going to save by utilizing Taranis.
Interesting.
Not that I want anybody not to have a job, but maybe do more acres or do the same acres more efficiently without hiring extra people.
Right.
For what we cost is way less than it costs to hire a full-time employee with benefits and again, not that I want somebody to not have a job, but
sure. But just speaking about that value proposition for somebody that's already got a business like this, that's it's a big part of it. It really is, controlling that cost. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Sure. And I guess in your experience, this is something we've been, I think, talking about a lot in some of our other episodes and thinking about a lot is the role of that trusted advisor in terms of bringing precision ag to growers, because growers don't necessarily have the time to dive into the technology all that much. And, the companies don't necessarily always have the boots on the ground expertise to be able to provide that. And so can you talk about that dynamic a little bit and just how valuable somebody that knows how to use this program is?
Well, it doesn't work without that. And in the trusted advisor, if they've got time to talk to their growers about the information we've gathered for them, rather than in the field trying to rush through. And I did it for too many years. I know how it goes.
Right.
You get out there and your phone's ringing and you're thinking about everywhere else that you should be, instead of standing out in the middle of a cornfield
and really picking up on the small details.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're not, you leave a field, you might actually download 6, 8, 10 things at the very most.
Sure.
And then if it makes it from here to paper, by the time you forget half of it, that's probably doing good too. So now I've given the trusted advisor all this information to spend time talking to the grower instead. Our thing is, let us do the work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let us go do the hard stuff. So you've got time to spend with your growers and make decisions and plan, rather than trying to do a good job when we know we're not covering the whole field out scouting.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work with combining this Taranis scouting with the drones and also the ground truthing? Is there like a certain amount of time Crop Scout should be spending out in the field, but also kind of balancing that with the customer face time. Like how does that, where is the balance there, do you think,
Right.
as far as ground truthing goes?
And there's not a number. Almost all of my clients at some point do ground truth a lot. We've got a Scout app. We've got a Taranis Connect as our mobile app.
Okay.
And if a field shows up on Connect, there was something that you need to pay attention to. So that's the new filtering that we do. You can still do everything in the dashboard, but we started Connect this year.
Sure.
You get a grower and the advisor get a message that says, we did these 10 fields got scouted yesterday. These 2 have this issue, so you need to go look at it.
Go look at it right now, yeah.
And then there's a Scout app that you can pull the field up and walk right to the place rather than it takes you right there. So
yeah. So just thinking about this, I mean, I've never crop scouted. You've done it for 20 years before now. Thinking about how many acres you used to cover, or how many acres your typical agronomist is out there covering. How many more acres do they actually cover at any given point in time, kind of using this Taranis platform? I mean, how much do you think it really increases their productivity?
It's kind of apples and lemons, because if a person went out on two legs and collected 100 data points in a 200-acre field, how long would that take?
It'd take forever. Yeah.
It'd take a couple days,
right?
A minimum,
right?
So we go out and do a scout a couple hundred acres in 45 minutes, and then go to the next 200. And, a pilot, if it's kind of like anything in retail, whether you're spraying or spreading fertilizer. If it's good going, they get more done. If
right.
It's a little fields and they're
40, up and down,
40 gates to go through. Then it takes longer. They don't get as much done.
Right.
But most of Nebraska, it's a lot of bigger fields, and they get 1,000, 1,500 acres a day done. Sometimes they get more than that done in a day.
Yeah.
And think of all the data points in that.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard a lot from growers, they really value having kind of these interconnections. So, like, for example, guys that have John Deere Operations Center, they really love that they can bring in prescriptions from a lot of different places. I assume that's an area that Taranis is looking at, or maybe they already have. Do you already have something kind of built into the platform for integration there?
Ish.
Yeah.
So APIs or something. I didn't even know what API was 3 years ago.
Right. Yep.
And I know that we're working on some pretty specific ones, and that's something that's going to evolve with the rest of it. But right now, I can make a prescription in the dashboard and just export the generic shape files and plug it into anything. It's not specific to any one display, but if you can do a generic shape file, we can export the prescription.
I guess I kind of want to dig into your own experience, working with growers and kind of working with this imagery a little bit more, and just kind of ask for, I guess, some of your honest evaluation of what you've seen out there. Are there any particular like stressors out there that the Taranis system does a really, really good job of picking up, and are there other ones that it struggles with right now?
I would say that if there's anything that insects and corn we struggle with, because we're taking a picture down, and like I said, they're not out there waving a flag and saying,
right, come get me. Yeah.
So that's an area that, and I don't know how that's not going to get fixed with an image from above. I don't care how good we do it. It's
got to be a change in how the fields are flown or where the sensors are located, something like that, in order to fix that issue. Right?
There has to be something. Yeah. So I know in Western Nebraska, Western bean cutworm is a big deal. Mm-hmm. So all my retailers out there know that they're going to have to go put boots on the ground when it's Western bean time and look for those egg masses. Sure. Specific things for me, I know that I probably am our biggest complainer of any of our customers, because I know what I would, how I would be if I was doing what I used to do. Yeah. And I try to make people go out and prove us wrong or that we've missed something. Mm-hmm. And not that we haven't at some point, but maybe once or twice did we miss anything
Right.
over the thousands and thousands of acres that we've done. If it's a disease or a nutrient deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
And what the AI is really, really good at is tagging everything.
Sure.
It may call a nutrient deficiency a disease or vice versa because they
Right.
look too similar.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, weeds, it takes 50,000 images for it to learn one thing.
Sure.
So weeds we can cram down its throat from the greenhouse
Right.
at UNL, the greenhouse at Iowa
Yeah.
State, the greenhouse at K-State. You know,
Yeah.
it's easy to show it all those images in short
Absolutely.
order.
Mm-hmm.
Nutrient deficiencies and diseases aren't always very specific at how they present themselves.
Right.
So,
In conjunction with other things that are going on in the field and everything else.
right, a lot of times might be wind,
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
you know, especially in our world.
Sure.
And when you go west, it's really predominant where you get some wind early and it looks like a nutrient deficiency or
Yeah.
but the thing I love about it is it still tags it. There's a locator on where
There's
is.
something wrong here. We don't know what it is.
Yes.
But there's
If
something
it's
wrong.
not a healthy crop plant, this is where it is, and you need to go look at it.
Okay. Interesting. And so kind of along that, maybe taking a sidestep from your experience, what have been some of the great stories that you've heard from the people that you work with? And what have they said, man, this is really valuable, that you were like, I never, thought of using it this way before, or maybe like I didn't realize how valuable that would be to somebody.
I think the replant's something that, when I was a young man and started going to a K-State, the first thing that my advisor, who was our crop science professor, we had to learn Burchett's Law, which I worked at Kansas Crop Improvement, and Lowell Burchett was the director of crop improvement. Burchett's Law was 90% everything you can do for that crop's done when it gets planted. So
Sure.
that was 30 some years ago.
Right.
I shouldn't admit that, but that stuck with me, and it's true.
Right.
If you don't get that stand, you're behind the 8 ball before you ever get started. So that's I probably hear that the very most is with the stand.
Sure.
Second is weeds.
Yeah.
Making zone maps for application. I've got a couple retailers that will take the weed map from the stand count flight, which is not identifying, it's calling them grass weeds or broadleaf weeds.
Sure.
And taking those heat maps and putting more residual on where the concentrations of weeds are more.
I'm intrigued to hear that there are actually people are out there doing site-specific weed management already, because we're still trying to get to the point where we have the tools, the machinery tools to do it, but people are, I guess there's that much demand for it right now.
Well, I think that you probably don't go a day anymore in agriculture where you don't hear sustainability.
Right.
And that's a big part of it is, we're all you can't just go dump everything out there and it needs to get very specific of the products we use and the amounts we use. And I think that there's a lot of folks, a lot more than I thought, that's working very hard towards that.
So I guess, just continuing on, like is that kind of what you're most excited about moving forward, is kind of the weed side? I know you said you did weeds for a long time, but what most excites you about the opportunity to use Taranis' product?
Every single part of it. Not being a company man about it, but
sure.
I love being an agronomist. I love retail. As crazy as that sounds,
Yeah.
I fed off of retail.
Sure.
I've never done anything where I'm so excited and eager to get out of bed every morning and go talk to people about what Taranis does.
Yeah.
And then the direction that we have and the where we're going is endless.
Right.
So, the exciting thing is what new thing are they going to tell us about today that we didn't know was coming?
Sure. So even you don't even, sometimes there are things that come down the pipe that you weren't even aware of. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, this is a cool feature.
Oh, yeah. Our developers in the background are always dreaming up new things or technologies or ways to do things that we don't necessarily know about once we know about them, probably going to happen.
Right. They're going to be in the platform for you to talk to somebody about before too long.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned sustainability and then your experience in ag retail. And also now since you're working with Taranis, now you probably feel like you have a lot more information than you had in the past. Have you learned anything about, ag production systems, or is there, practices that you kind of like to see with your technology? And like, what kind of are you learning just, from agronomy and crop production? Is there something that you see working really well for managing some of these tough weeds that you're talking about, getting that good stand? What kind of are you learning about? How can a farmer, like, what's working?
We're a little bit in the infancy of being able to answer that question, and the reason why is we've got 1 year worth of data, and yeah, there's things that we see that we're like, well, maybe you should do this differently. You need to go get the planter. When's the last time you drug that thing out before March and wanted to get it doctored up to ready to go plant?
Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that we see that we want to do something with. We just don't have the years of data. Even as an agronomist, I was very almost crazy nuts with my growers about, we need to be grid sampling, and we need to do it. If we're not doing it every year, we need to do it every other year, so we always know exactly where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all those data layers to be able to make the right decision with fertility. This weed thing, like we're able to do. This is something that we're doing right now that we never have been able to do. I mean, there's never been anything that could capture the weeds and where they're at and the density of them in a field. So to answer your question, we're gathering the data to be able to continue to evolve with all of that. And maybe by next year, they'll get some people already are doing it.
Right. So we've asked you about what you're most excited about, but I guess what I haven't asked you about is where can people who are excited about Taranis listening to this, where can they find you? What range does Taranis cover? Where are you available in the U.S., internationally? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So our global headquarters is the suburb of Indianapolis. Our innovation centers in Tel Aviv, Israel.
Okay.
We have operations in Brazil, Ukraine, Europe. Gosh, I hope I don't forget somebody since this is getting recorded. Obviously, the United States, but even in the U.S., it's basically the Corn Belt, the High Plains, and the Delta.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yep. Concentrations of ag in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah. For what we do with operationally, what we do, It has to be where there's something to do.
Right. Yeah. And I assume that California is probably not too far out from being able to get Taranis's offerings as well, but the products are probably pretty tailored for row crop agriculture. Is that the case?
It is. I mean, we do corn, soybeans, sugar beets, cotton, sunflowers, potatoes, sugar cane. We do a lot of sugar cane.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't want to forget something. A lot of edibles, edible beans.
Sure.
I guess I should make sure to say edible beans in this day and age. Edible beans.
Peanuts at all?
No, we don't do any peanuts. And you start talking about crops like peanuts. There's a lot of acres in the South.
Yeah.
But it's not enough acres to justify all the research it takes to be good at scouting.
Right. I was just wondering because there are huge disease issues and everything like that in peanuts. It seems like there's a big opportunity, but it is the research element, right?
Not that we won't. Right. And at the end of the day, it's capturing and knowing what we captured. We need to teach the machine how to identify the diseases and how to identify nutrient disease. Density. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to teach it those things. Not that we won't. Because the more that it learns, the easier it is to teach it. Right. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If somebody, is in one of these areas and they're like, all right, I want to go check out Taranis, where would you direct them first to kind of start getting a feel for what Taranis can offer them?
So we have a website. It's www.taranis.ag.
Okay.
Is the website, or I can put my phone number if you want.
Sure. So if you want to, I'll throw it in the show notes if you're willing to give it out. Yeah.
My phone number is 402-269-0799. I'm the regional manager from basically Nebraska north to North Dakota and south to the Panhandle and west to Wyoming and Colorado. So
fantastic. Yeah.
I do a lot of driving.
There you go. Yeah. Put a lot of miles on that truck. I'll tell you that. Yeah, we'll put all that in the show notes so people can get in touch with you if they want to, for sure.
Yeah, and if they're in Iowa or Missouri or I can get them in touch with the right folks over there.
Fantastic. That'd be great.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't talk about? We always like to ask for a piece of advice, but maybe before I ask for a piece of advice, is there anything we didn't touch on you wanted to touch on here today?
I'm sure there probably is, but I can't think of
Can't
what
think
it
of
would
it
be
right
right
now.
now. No, data dump, and the brain cells are fried right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So the last thing we always ask people is if they have any advice for our listeners, and the specific advice that I want to ask from you is how would you ask our listeners or advise our listeners to approach how to use imagery to impact their crop production practices?
So there's been a lot of imagery around that you could go get for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all reactive. I don't know how many times I got a call from the grower in the combine. Hey, can you go see me pull a satellite from this field and see when you can see something?
Yeah.
You can't do anything about it. It's just knowing that something happened, which is probably useless. Use imagery to be proactive in everything you do. And we've really got that solution to be proactive and have actionability to get things, take care of issues before they become an issue.
Thank you very much to Tim Pearson for taking the time to join us here on the FarmBits podcast. I thought it was a really cool interview to get a chance to do with learning a little bit more about Taranis. It seems like they're really making some strides within the precision agriculture space. And I really like to hear about how they're helping make crop scouts and agronomists more effective and efficient in terms of their acres by providing actionable insights at a very high level, very concise, saying these are the fields that need your attention and here are the potential problems to look for and where you should look for them. So I think that's a pretty cool thing that's being enabled by a lot of tech on the back end, high resolution imagery, AI. There's just a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, and one of those applications that we could be using the technology that I really liked would have been stand counts. I think that could be used to find or troubleshoot issues in the field, such as a planter unit being a little off, or maybe an insect pest or a fungus pest, things like that we could go in and make adjustments to do a better job.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing when he showed us kind of the demo after we got done with the interview. He was able to identify volunteered corn in a cornfield. And if you think about how hard that would be to spot, or at least you would think about in terms of an image, it's kind of incredible what the algorithm's able to do.
Yeah, that was really impressive what he showed us there afterwards.
Yeah. So that'll conclude this episode of the FarmBits podcast. Next week, we look forward to continuing to bring you new information regarding the precision crop protection opportunities that are available in modern digital agriculture. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today on the FarmBits podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts to be informed about the latest content each week.
We welcome your feedback, so if you have comments or questions for us, please reach out to us over email, on Twitter, or in the review section of your favorite podcast platform. Our contact information can be found in the show notes.
We'd like to thank Nebraska Extension for their support of this podcast and their commitment to providing high-quality informational material to members of the agricultural community in Nebraska and beyond.
The opinions expressed by the hosts and guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect reviews of Nebraska Extension or the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of FarmBits.